Hey there, folks. Welcome to Head, Heart, and Hustle, the podcast for creatives. I'm Alan Plummer, your host, and thanks for joining us. Now, if you're new to the podcast, Head, Heart, and Hustle is designed to give you insights and encouragement from real working creatives. Anyone with a side hustle or creative outlet can feel isolated from their friends, their family, and other people around them who just don't get their passion. That's why this podcast exists, to help you feel motivated, learn, and just get a nice pick-me-up of creative energy from other people like yourself. Every episode, I interview a creative individual who doesn't just pretend to be creative. They've rolled up their sleeves and are producing great things because they need to. They know that being creative is part of who they are. Does that sound familiar? Good, then you're in the right place. Now, today, I'm interviewing CeCe Pleasants. CeCe and I have been friends for years. We've known each other since we were teenagers. In fact, we went to the same high school in a little town called Mechanicsville, Virginia, in the suburbs of Richmond. And we even both worked as performers at the same amusement park when we were in high school. We might talk about that. We'll get into that a little bit in the interview. But when I started to think about this podcast and folks that I wanted to interview, CeCe was arguably at the top of that list. She's an amazingly talented person, has had a wonderful career. She lived in New York at the same time I did. She's gone from doing stand-up to writing for television. And she may not be a household name, but you certainly know the people that she's written for and worked with. Names like Ellen DeGeneres, Arsenio Hall, Carlos Mencia, and right now Bill Nye. Her latest project is working on the new Bill Nye show for Netflix. So I jumped at the chance to be able to get her on the phone and interview her. I think she's a great first interview out of the gate. She does a wonderful job in the interview. I'm not so sure, but I'm really happy to have her for my first guest, and she absolutely was gracious enough to do that. So with that, we'll dive right in and enjoy. So how you been?
Good.
You been? Good. How's the good? Thanks for speaking with me. It's funny because when I started to work on this and I started to think about people that I wanted to talk to, you were one of the first names that came to mind. And you and I have been talking about this for quite a while, or I've certainly shared this with you because this is a project of mine that I've been thinking about for quite a while. And it just seemed like there's always interest in kind of hearing about other people's projects and what they're doing. And I know I always come back to Philadelphia and come back to the East Coast feeling really energized after chatting with you and catching up and everything. And that was where a big part of this idea came from.
Cool.
So it's great. I'm really glad that you were really able and willing to do this.
Yeah,
So I really appreciate it.
I'm excited that you're doing it. I think it's awesome.
It's fun. It's a fun little project.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that said, let's just start off with something, pretty straightforward. I could sit here and introduce you pretty easily, but I always think it's better for people to tell a little bit about themselves and introduce themselves. So why don't you go ahead and start with that, and then we'll just kind of, I have a couple questions, but we'll just see where the conversation goes.
Okay. Hi, I'm CeCe. I'm a comedy writer, and I've been writing comedy for television for about 10 years professionally, and or more, 10 years or more. In television, like just general, mostly comedy variety. So like Ellen and Arsenio are the big ones that you would know. I wrote on Wipeout for like 6 years, which you may think is a reality show, but it has they're two guys that talk the whole time and we write what they say. So I was the supervising comedy producer on that, which basically means head writer. So and now I'm working on Bill Nye Saves the World, which is a science comedy talk show for Netflix. And it's I think it's going to be really great. I really love it. And I love Bill Nye. He's the best. He's exactly what you think he is. He's just really nice and hilarious. And yeah, that's what I do. That's me.
That's awesome. And this is your first project for Netflix. This is the first time you've worked with them, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So that's awesome. That's got to feel really different having worked, because you've worked in cable, you've worked on, the big three or the big five, and now you're kind of going this route. So yeah. We could do a whole other conversation about media and kind of where it's going, but yeah.
I mean, but that is kind of where television is going, I think. It's definitely headed toward I mean, it's not even new media anymore, really. It's kind of the thing that you do. Netflix is what you do. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And they're putting it. I see. It looks like they're putting, depending on the article you read, it's either $5 or $6 billion into new shows and stuff for next year, which is just outstanding and just kind of mind blowing when you think about that. It's just fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's going to change, and go backwards anytime soon. So, it's funny because I chuckled a little bit because when you introduced yourself, you talked about writing professionally for 10 years. And then I think about, full disclosure, how long you and I have known each other, because we go back quite a ways, right?
Quite a ways. Yeah. Don't out how old I am, Alan.
Exactly. That was an extra 5 years. That's all I'll say. But I mean, it does go back to kind of us. We're a couple years apart, but we went to the same high school right outside of Richmond, Virginia, and kind of both of us gravitated towards performing at a young age. And as long as I've known you, you've been a performer. Going back to essentially when we were kids and young adults working at an amusement park there, and then you shifted and headed up to New York. So it's funny. So one of the things that I'm interested in hearing about is kind of how you gravitated into this space and how it goes, how that career went from you pursuing it and doing it because it was something that you purely loved and kind of then wanting to make a career out of that and what that progression looks like.
It's probably, I don't know. I think everybody's different because entertainment is weird and interesting. But I was doing, you and I worked together at an amusement park where we were performing, and then I went to school for musical theater, and the American Musical and Dramatic Academy, and then I did musical theater for a minute. I did about a year of that, and then I was like, I'm not sure if this is what I really want to do after going to school for it. And then I went back to New York and started doing stand-up, just stand-up comedy and sketch comedy. And I was doing a sketch comedy show with my comedy partner at the time, Katie Kennedy, who's great, hilarious. She's still doing a lot of stand-up, a lot of performing. And we had written and were performing this show downtown in New York. And someone saw us and asked us to submit a packet for a TV show on the Oxygen Network, which at the time was like just a baby network. And that was my first TV writing job. And I think actually the first round we didn't get it, and then they called us back because they had another spot or something. And a packet, if any people don't know, which there's no reason you should, is basically like if a TV show, if it's like a variety show or something like that, like if you're in sitcom or the scripted world, you have a script that's kind of your calling card or whatever. But in variety, like everything's sort of different. Everyone's voice is different. The host's voice is different. So you write a packet basically for that host or that particular show. This was a comedy game show for young women, so we had to write a bunch of funny questions with funny and accurate answers, and that was sort of our writing sample. So that was my first job, and I really liked it, and I thought, oh, this is cool. And I don't know, I loved performing, but I don't think I ever had the thing of like I need this performing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
But I loved creating content for TV and for performers, and I like have always had a real love of comedy, and so like being able to do that and make a living at it was like, oh, I think at that point it hadn't even occurred to me that was a possibility, and I was like, wow, this is great. I definitely want to try to keep doing this. So
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a very different mindset too, I think. I mean, you talk about being a performer versus being a writer and being kind of behind the scenes, right? I mean, as you know, like my background with writing, there was this desire to write and of course still writing and writing my own stuff, but then there was never for me, there was never this need to kind of have my name known.
Yeah.
And so professionally, right, now again, right, I'll be the corporate sellout of our group from when we were kids, and I'm okay with that. But, if you think about my experience and what ended up working out really well for me professionally was kind of shifting into that ghostwriter mode of writing books for people and having, a nice list of stuff that I've written and clips and things, but then being okay putting words in someone else's mouth. Now, in my world, it's been in book form. You've been doing it on television.
Right.
And I think you're right. I think there's two different kinds of personalities there. But it's funny because I think about your voice and kind of, what you do professionally and how you've gravitated towards this stuff. I mean, to your point, you started off doing this show for, Oprah's network for, teenage and young girls, and then doing stand-up. And then we should probably talk a little bit about, which is one of my favorite things that you and Katie did, was the whole subway approach that I always thought really kind of got you guys on the map quite a bit.
Yeah.
And that's a fascinating thing as well. But then you went from there to your point of working on, essentially imported game shows where you were writing liners for that led to, right? No.
Yeah,
that led into Wipeout, right?
Which was like,
you're
which is a stoner favorite, and one of my favorite shows that I ever worked on, which was like they took a Japanese game show and cut it down to a half hour and sort of overdubbed it with no regard for the original Japanese. It was just comedians. It was this great, amazing group of comedians from the Groundlings and me, and they, which was really neat. I was very honored to be there. And yeah, it was hilarious. It was a really funny, really, really funny show.
Yeah, that's awesome. But it is funny. It's funny how that
but
stuff kind of works out.
Weird how you end up. Yeah, I mean, if you had asked me when I was 20. If this is what I would be doing, I would look at you funny, for sure. I would definitely give you a sideways glance. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't what I started out doing, but it was it was just, I think you just find what you like, and if I had known I was going to do this, I might have gone to college for something different, or I might have. Yeah, I mean, now there's all sorts of neat opportunities for the kids with TV production and stuff like that in school. But, the YouTubes and the electronic internets. But,
yeah. Well, I mean, even this, right? I mean, this is not something I would have entertained a couple of years ago. And, and you and I have talked about it. We both joke about, leaving Richmond and everything and when we finished college, but now it's a very different city than when you and I left. And the world is a very different place, right? I mean, as a writer, I felt like I needed to get out and kind of go somewhere else because I didn't feel like I was going to have a lot of opportunities staying there as a writer. And now, right, with the way media works and everything being decentralized, it's a whole other world of opportunities, and that people can. It doesn't really matter, I don't think, geographically where they are.
No, I mean, it's great. It's really great how, the growth of the World Wide Web has it just allowed people who, I think it's been so great for women. It's allowed people who wouldn't have otherwise been allowed into the boys club or geographically wouldn't have been able to get their content out there, otherwise. It's cool. Moms who maybe don't get to go out or can't pick up their family and move to New York or LA or whatever can do funny things or poignant things or whatever on the internet, and they have the whole world that can potentially see it. So it's super cool. I mean, it's kind of what I feel like Katie and I were kind of doing that sort of thing in the analog back when we did the thing you alluded to, which was we performed on the subway. We did this thing called Subway Soaps, and it was kind of a guerrilla theater thing.
Yeah.
Do you want me to?
No, I was going to keep beating around the bush, and I didn't describe it, but I feel like we probably should because we're both laughing as we bring it up.
Yeah. So what we did was it's called Subway Soaps. We would get on the. Just basically the first episode was we get on. We don't really say anything to each other. I was dressed as a businesswoman. Katie was dressed as a homeless woman. She does sort of the thing that probably still happens. I haven't been to New York in a while, but I assume that someone will get on the subway and say, hello, I need a little cash and I'm going to sing for you now. And if you would be willing to give me some money, that would be great. And she starts singing, We've Only Just Begun. And I'm wearing a business suit and I'm like, shut up, you shut up. And I was so scared to do this because I thought people would be mad at me for being mean to this poor homeless woman. And instead, everybody was like supporting me, like, yeah, we're tired of this crap.
Before they even realized what was going on.
Yeah, and then
you were lucky it didn't turn into a mob scene.
I know, it's crazy. I know. I feel like it would be different now. Anyway, I'm harassing this poor woman who's singing We've Only Just Begun, and then suddenly I have a moment of recognition and I'm like, and it turns out that we're long lost sisters and we end up hugging and singing together, and then we move on to the next car and we have a friend, did you ever do it? I don't know, we would always just enlist friends or whatever who to like pass out flyers that said you have just witnessed an episode of Subway Soaps. So it was basically just forced theater, and it kind of caught on, and we got it, like we were in a couple of something your audience may not know, but there are these things called newspapers, and we were in
Is that where they put ink on a sheet of paper and you actually exactly
print them out and they deliver them to your house sometimes,
right.
Well,
you actually got some notoriety around it. I remember, didn't you guys get a piece in or a little blurb or a shout out in like Time Out New York or something pretty sizable? Yeah,
we were in the Boston Globe, which was crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then there was CNN had this little like weird little show called Showbiz Today, and we were on CNN's Showbiz Today, which I think I still have a copy of somewhere on VHS. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So yeah, it is kind of amazing how this stuff, and it does feel like, right? So, you think about mass media, and right when you think about trying to become an artist and what success looks like, and whether or not you're a visual artist or an actor or a musician or a writer, I don't know about you, but when I was younger, it always felt like you had to go towards like this approach of mass media, right? Success for me was like either getting a play on a stage or getting an agent and a book deal.
Right.
And that's no longer the case. And in the process, right, whether it's publishing your own books or, musicians have always had their own bands, and you're mentioning YouTube and everything. Not only has that changed the landscape for everybody, but it's also kind of broken up this idea of mass media, because what it feels like, right, is there's all these different niche audiences, and you can kind of find your pocket, it feels like, and define success in your own way without being a household name.
Yeah, exactly. You can find your audience, you can find your people, you can, and whether or not you go viral AF, as the kids like to do. But I mean, yeah, like it's you don't have to just be one thing. You don't have to like try to get, for me, like in television or whatever, it's not like there's not 3 networks anymore. There's a million networks, and there's all this new media, and so there is like, so I when I was trying to make the deal with Bill Nye Saves the World, there was something else kind of on the horizon for me as well, and I was talking to my manager, and I was like, I really want to I love science, like I'm psyched about science, this is really what I want to do. And he's like, oh, well, that's good to know, because we have like 3 or 4 science shows going elsewhere. And I'm like, okay, great. I mean, it's just because there's just so much, which is great. Right. I mean, it makes it different, but I think it's cool, because I think you find a voice, and though maybe you're not Seinfeld or whatever, like maybe you're not reaching millions and millions and millions of people, but maybe you're reaching 1 million people or 100,000 people or 50,000 people who really get you and get what you're saying, and want to participate with you in your, creative endeavors or whatever. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even Seinfeld, right now he's got his comedians in cars
getting
coffee. And that's his own, right? I'm sure that's his pet project. And, I'm sure it's not about money for him, but it looks like it's probably just a lot of fun for him to do.
Definitely.
And for all the people involved. So, and you feel that when you watch it. So that said, right, I think in your industry, you and I have talked about this before. It's pretty, when you're working, you're working around the clock, I guess it sounds like, when shows are in production and you're scripting and being involved. Mm-hmm. But then I also know that there can be kind of lags in between shows. So it's kind of these peaks and valleys. What does that look like for you? I guess one of the questions is kind of in terms of side projects and like passion projects, things that you like to do creatively but aren't about money and paying the bills. What does that look like for you in a career like that, where it's not kind of a standard 9 to 5, but you still want to kind of have your own things that you can do outside of the job?
That's kind of the hardest thing for me. Just finding like balance in what I'm doing and like doing production, just because production is like really taxing and as I've said many times, it's really hard to write for 8 or 9 or 10 or 12 hours a day and then come home and write, or like get up early in the morning and try to write before I go to my writing job, which is a very high class problem, and I'm very grateful that I even have it. But it's
but I get it.
I do have that downtime. I mean, I have like I think when I saw you, I was just coming out of I had been off for like a month or two, and it was kind of great. Like I was happy to have it, although I was stressed about. There's always sort of this constant hustle for me. Like if I'm like when I was doing Wipeout, that show ran for 7 seasons, and that was a great situation because I always kind of knew that Wipeout was coming back and it was there, but I haven't had that that kind of sort of steady show in a while. So when I'm off, it's hard to focus on the fun projects that I want to do. Like I'm trying to write I have an idea for sort of a limited series drama thing. And I've been working on that, but I just find it hard to focus when I'm sort of nervous about like maybe I'll never get another job again.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it sounds like, I mean, when I was freelancing, right? I mean, I spent 8-9 years as a freelance journalist. I can totally relate, right? If you remember when I was in grad school, even before I was in grad school, when I was up in New York, like you're doing the work, but you're always trying to find your next job. Right. And it was nearly impossible for me to do any creative writing. Just because you were too tapped out.
Yeah. And you're, it's like when you're stressed, it's hard to be creative. Although I think I also work really well with deadlines and stuff like that. So if there's something, I just work better when someone's paying me for it. But that's something that I'd like to personally and professionally would love to just work on and do a better job of getting. And I did the last time I was off for, I think when I saw you, which was maybe 2 months ago, like I had been off for a bit, and I had actually kind of accomplished something. I had gotten an outline together, and but yeah, it is sort of figuring out how to be creative while coping with hustling for work, and also the stress of being afraid that I feel like every creative person has this fear of like, oh, eventually they're going to find out that I'm not talented and I'm never going to get another job again.
Oh, absolutely. We're all frauds. We're all waiting to be discovered. And it's funny because it doesn't matter. That doesn't go away.
No.
You know what I mean?
Never.
It's like no matter, because so like if like to your point about talking to your 20-year-old self, right? First of all, if somebody had told me at 20 or something that I would have made a career out of writing about Wall Street, I would have told them to get the hell out. You know what I mean? There would have been absolutely not.
Right.
But now, you joke to kind of, my brother and I call it first world problems, right? Things that we have to deal with and things that as an artist and creatively, you kind of, it's these internal struggles or these anxieties that you have that are totally internalized, but it's amazing because you don't realize them, but they do really impact a lot of that stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't have an answer for how to push past that. Honestly, I think
that's part of the process.
Yeah.
I don't think there's an answer. Honestly, I think there is an answer because I also think, right, this is going to sound awful, but I also think there is such a thing as getting too comfortable when you're an artist, and then the work really starts to suffer.
Right.
I think some of that kind of whatever that motivation is behind it, whether or not it's a hunger or kind of a drive or a real conviction about a message or a story, when that's gone, or when you don't have that kind of fire anymore, it really does impact the work you do. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think I think there's a certain amount, like you definitely have to, it's important to get confident in the fact that you know what you're doing. And I feel like after having done this for so long, I definitely feel like I know what I'm doing and I trust myself, but I don't think I'll ever trust myself so much that I won't reach out to other people to get notes and opinions and whatever. And then you do with that what you will. Like maybe you don't like what someone else has to say and you're like, oh fuck it, I'm not going to do this. But
right.
So pardon me for swearing. But
I already did. It's fucking fine. Don't even worry about it. It's fine.
Cool.
It's okay.
Yeah, but I think like I agree with you. I think that you always need to have a little of that edge, whatever it is, like fear, or like not that you shouldn't trust yourself, but you should always get a second opinion. You should always have people around you that you trust that like will say this is garbage, you shouldn't do this, or and then like you're right, like you should. I think it's good for everybody to be kind of constantly striving for the next thing, because when you just sit back and relax and you're like, oh great, I'm done, I can just relax now. It's just like nobody wants to read a book about you being relaxed.
Right.
or watch a TV show about like, oh, everything's cool, it's all working out. Like it doesn't make good TV.
No, and nobody's going to relate to that.
Yeah.
Lives are messy things.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. So what do you think, I mean, given where you're at in your career now, what do you think has been your most encouraging success that you've had working creatively?
I don't know. I was talking to somebody about this recently, and I think like, I mean, I'm not a big rock star writer or anything, but the fact that I've made a living doing this feels great for me. And I'm always striving. It's kind of that thing. I feel like I've never been at a job where I'm like, this is the job. This is it. But I have been at jobs where like, if this went for 15 years, I would be happy. Like I would love it. The last show I worked on was called No You Shut Up, and it was very small. But it was with Paul F Tompkins and pumpkin puppets from the pumpkin puppets.
Okay.
No, it's just regular puppets from the Jim Henson Company, and it was a political show, and it was really silly, and they just kind of let us do whatever we wanted, and it was so much fun, and the people were great, and the show I'm working on now with Bill Nye is like really amazing, and I'm learning so much, and the people are just super smart, and Bill is great. So I think my like the places where I feel the most successful are when I'm doing something I like and feel proud of, and I'm excited for people to watch, and I am working with people that I like, and I just like going to work every day, and I'm like, yes, this rules, I mean, because I think probably anybody in any field has had a job where they go to work every day and they dread what they're doing, and they dread the people that they're doing it with.
Right.
So I think for me, like, my definition of success has changed a lot since I was 20, and now it's just making a living, being comfortable, and doing things that I like with people that I like is like, it's just that's the tops. So
that's it.
Yeah.
Right. And as long as I've known you, I don't know that we've ever had a conversation. I mean, you've always seemed to genuinely like all the projects that you've worked on, or at least all the ones that you and I have talked about. So it does seem like you've been really fortunate in that sense, and that you've built up a pretty good network and have had that opportunity to do a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
which is absolutely impressive.
Yeah. I mean, I've done some garbage, but
you just don't talk about it. That's okay.
Talk about it as much. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I really don't want to be famous. If I'm not a millionaire, and I'm not, if I'm not a household name, which I don't want to be. But if I'm not, like, I don't want a prize or an Emmy or whatever. Like, if I get to keep doing things that I like and things that make me laugh and stuff that I think is interesting, with people that I like that's cool. I'm gold. I really like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what advice would you give your 20-year-old self or your teenage self, if you think about people and like what it looks like to become a creative? What advice would you give them?
I think I would just say for me in particular, I feel like the only thing that's really ever held me back was confidence and being, I just said that you should never trust yourself too much, but like you should trust yourself and you should be confident and don't let the fact that you don't know exactly how all of it works limit you or make you feel like you can't take that job or you can't do that thing because you don't know everything about it. I mean, I think that's like, I think probably men do this too, but I feel like it's definitely, for me, it was kind of a lady thing. It was kind of a Southern lady thing of like, oh, well, I have to know everything about everything that I'm doing before I go into this job or into this world, or I have to be completely honest about what my skill set is and blah, blah, blah. And no, I mean, I feel like, a lot of times, a lot of the really successful people I know just like barrel in there head first and say like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. Screw you, I mean, you don't have to be a dick, but I just think like, I would tell myself to just, calm down a little bit and just like take that job, take the bull by the horns, like get in there. Don't be afraid and trust yourself and know that you're funny and good. And if you don't know what you're doing, then you will learn what you're doing pretty quickly.
Somebody will tell you.
Someone will tell you.
Tell you, no question.
And it's okay to get fired, and I mean, it's okay to like mess up and not do great. Like you're not gonna like no one's gonna let, like if you fail, you're gonna know that you failed and then you're gonna do better next time or whatever. So.
Right, and we're not going to out anything here, but you've been fired from jobs before, and the world didn't fall apart, the sky didn't collapse, did it?
Well, that's another thing I would tell my younger self is just that every television writer gets fired, which is like the first time that it happened to me, I was so devastated, and I felt like the world ended, or I just didn't get picked up again or whatever, which is a thing that happens. Like shifts change and executives change around and blah, blah, blah. And the direction of shows change. And I mean, it's so much about being able to deal with disappointment. I mean, I would really say that like 50% of television writing is being able to deal with crushing disappointment and like and picking yourself up and moving on. And yeah, I mean, I got fired from a show and I was so devastated. It's really the only show I've ever been fired from. There have been a couple where like it's been canceled, but this one was where I was just like, see you later, mashed potato. And I was so devastated. And so I was so like, I didn't even tell anybody about it. And I was just like, really like, I felt like I had to hide in the shadows. And then I just sort of mentioned it. Someone said, "Oh, I saw that you worked on this show," and I was like, "Yeah, I did." And I was like, "Oh, tell me about it. I totally got fired from that show." And I'm like, "Yay!" And then as I started talking to people about it, it was like everybody in Hollywood had been fired from this show, and I was like, "Yes, I'm in a club now. It's cool."
It's a badge of honor.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's funny, and when you think about kind of the idea of having to know everything, I think it's not just you, and I don't know if it's gender specific. I think it's a Southern thing, to be honest with you. I've been the same way, and that's something I've really had to struggle with, even in terms of writing and wanting to be an expert on certain topics, and and starting projects like this, like even just doing this podcast and kind of acknowledging that you don't know everything about it, but just being willing to kind of dive in. I think that makes total sense. Yeah. I've learned as I've gotten older that nobody gives you permission for anything, right? And so I mean, it's easy to gloss over, but think about what we talked about you in New York and you and Katie and you doing stand-up and the whole Subway soaps and everything. You guys just went and did it. Mm-hmm. And it would have been really easy to be in that situation and kind of question, are the cops going to stop us? Are we going to get fined? Is this going to happen, or is that going to happen? And it can be paralyzing. Yeah,
it really can. You can be paralyzed by your own brain telling you like, oh, this isn't a good idea. And honestly, two young women doing weird theater on the subway was maybe not the greatest idea. If we had had a little more, if we had been ourselves now, we might have talked ourselves out of it or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I think it's good. I just tell everybody to just lean the F in, just go for it.
Yeah. No, this is great. That's awesome. So I think that's it. I think, I don't have any other questions for you. It's always good to catch up. I really appreciate you giving up time on one of your valuable weekends, especially when you're in the middle of working on a new show like this. I know time is of the essence for you. So, so I think, other than the only thing I wanted to mention, or the only thing I think you probably wanted to mention is your Twitter handle. I mean, that's really where most people kind of...
Oh, yeah.
Your colleagues and everybody, and I'm going to ask you about before you can give the handle, but before you do that, I want to ask about the tweet this morning about waking up this kind of clown dream that you had, because you had to know the hell I was going to ask about that. In fact, I'm going to stall for time. I'm going to read this tweet verbatim. No fucking way, man. I'm going to find this out because I saw it about an hour before we talked. I was on Twitter. I was going through. I was checking our account because. Listeners, I actually run a social media team for our business,
right.
And I was looking out there, and I just happened to pull up your account and saw it, and I was like, first of all, your stuff always makes me chuckle, and it's always pretty solid, which is great, and I would expect nothing less. But then I get in there, and I'm like, and the tweet is, and literally I'm going to quote this, "Why, yes, I did start my Saturday by waking up screaming from a dream where a clown was strangling me with medical tubing." I don't even know what to say.
That was my dream.
That's what it is.
I do a lot of jokes on Twitter, but I also feel like it's kind of one of those things where you can also just barf out your personal garbage. So
yes. Well, you can do that. I have to rein it in a little bit.
Right. You have you're beholden to people who want to maintain a business or whatever, but I'm not. So
right. That's part of being a corporate sellout. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Good for you, P.S.
Exactly.
I've said this to you many times, but I think that you've done the right thing, and I think it's great that you actually make money and have a house and stuff. So
and it's nice.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's the grass is always greener, right? And I joked about this at the beginning. It's always good to anytime I get to come out to the West Coast and visit you guys, and by you guys I mean you and another friend of ours that also was from Virginia and worked at the aforementioned amusement park, and I'm going to end up interviewing him here soon as well, so he'll have a different episode. But it's always fascinating for me to come out and chat with the two of you because our lives are so different, but then there's certain commonalities there, and just, it's fascinating to see, and in many ways I've always been kind of interested in and envious of what you've been able to do, and our buddy Brian as well. But I think it's just, the grass is always greener, and I feel like no matter where you end up, there's always things that you kind of wish you had, and that it's never perfect.
Yeah, no.
There's always compromises.
No, which is okay. I mean, that's just life, man.
Well, that's life. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right,
We're just
exactly.
getting chased by clowns in our dreams.
That's right. That's exactly it.
Just for a moment, if I may, with the clown.
Yeah.
So it was so terrifying. First of all, the first part of the dream was that somebody had stolen my dog. And so I was trying to get to Charlie, my dog. And then I was running, and I ended up at Hollywood and Highland, which is a terrible place. And no offense to Hollywood and Highland in LA, but it's just it's very touristy, and there's just people everywhere. But I was running, and it was and no one would help me. And I'm they have my dog, and they'd taken my dog to this house. And then I'm running and trying to cross the street. And I was waving this car past me, but the car wouldn't stop. I mean, the car wouldn't go past. And then this fucking 6'4" clown gets out with a link
with the big red shoes,
of this
the full
medical tubing. Yes, full face of makeup, creepy, just big red shoes. But he was 6'4", and I'm help! And I'm trying to run away from the clown, and nobody's paying attention to me. And then he wraps the medical tubing around my neck. It was
on the street,
insane on the street, and nobody was doing anything. They were just you are on your own, bitch.
Good luck with that. Exactly. Oh, wow. I don't really remember my dreams, and sometimes when I hear stories like this, I'm kind of glad it just happened. So good. Well, all right. Thanks again. Always good to catch up. I'm really appreciative of you doing this. It's always fun to kind of chat about stuff. It's always energizing. Best of luck with Bill Nye and the show and Netflix. I'm sure it will be a great hit. I'm sure you guys are doing a lot of fun things. And we will catch up soon.
Okay.
All right, folks, I don't know about you, but I do not want to end this podcast with an image of a clown strangling me with medical tubing in my brain. So let's scrub that out, shall we? Of course, thank you to CeCe Pleasants for that great interview. I always love catching up with her, and I'm so appreciative that she was able to do this interview with me. So thank you, CeCe. It means the world to me that you would go first and do this. So thank you so much. As she mentioned, you can find her on Twitter at CeCe Pleasants. Definitely check her out. She has some great one-liners. She's just such a funny person. I definitely recommend you look into it. Let me mention a few housekeeping things while I'm doing this. First of all, let me just say that if you like the episode, do me a favor and rate us or write a review on iTunes or another podcast directory, whatever you use. And in fact, if you'd email me a screenshot of your review with your name and your mailing address, I'll be more than happy to send you a couple stickers of our logo as my way of saying thanks. I also want to mention that you can find us on the web at headheartandhustle.com. We've got tons of social media outlets, including Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google. All those links are embedded here on the podcast, so take a look. They're also on our website. Those are some great ways to stay on top of new episodes as they come out. I also want to give a quick thank you to Meg Shearer. Meg did the logo for me. Thank you for that, Meg. Wonderful, wonderful job. I love it. And if you're digging Meg's logo, you can actually find her other art on Society 6. We've got a link for that in the podcast as well. So if you're digging the logo, go check out her other stuff. You might find a print or something you like for your home. And let me also just say that coming up in our next episode is Ariel Tannenbaum. Ariel works for Buffer, but she has a pretty unique history as a creative individual. She's been a dancer, she's been a health coach, and she's just such a positive, outgoing person. I'm really looking forward to talking to her, so I hope you'll take a listen. And let me just say that lastly, if you're interested in being interviewed for a future episode of the podcast, shoot me an email. You can reach me at headheartandhustle@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Now, go create something. Have a good one.